That's great. Let me change my.
So now we have 2 participants.
You say 15 of them register, right?
Yes. So we have now all of, yeah. So we'll just give like 1 or 2 minutes to allow our attendees like to join us, and then we will start.
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. Can you hear and see me? It's okay. I can see.
I don't see them on the Zoom.
Yeah. Okay, then yeah, so we start the webinar. So yeah, hi everyone, welcome to our gender equality or understanding gender integration and gender-based analysis webinar. And this webinar will be covering gender equality topic, and I will answer question at the end for or about, the theme fund application. So yeah, thank you for joining us today. And I would like to introduce myself. My name is Abdel Kishta. I'm the International Program Coordinator in MCIC, mainly responsible for coordination of the Manitoba Government Matching Grant Program, which is Theme Fund, is one of the 4 funding stream. So yeah, before I start, I would like to acknowledge that MCIC office in on territory 1, and it is the traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of Métis Nation. So yeah, I will leave the mic to Maggie to introduce herself and like to start the webinar. Thank you. And by the way, if you have any question, we will like have like 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Maggie Zem. I work as a Program Officer, Gender for FIT, the Fund for Innovation and Transformation. It's really great to have this opportunity to share the gender integration and gender-based analysis with you. I know you all have lots of practical experience, and then hope this is a learning opportunity for us all. So today I will focus on gender integration, the gender equality marker, especially the gender-based analysis tools, how they can be applied in the program design, implementation, monitoring, reporting. And the focus will be sharing some cases, and I hope I will leave enough time for Q&A. It's always an important opportunity for me to learn from you too. So to give some background, I probably will, I know you already had the gender equality webinar last year in September, but I will quickly go over some information about SDGs and why gender equality is an important issue, and then FIA in this kind of big background, and then we'll go to the specific GBA tools and also gender-based analysis. So you are aware gender equality is the core SDG, SDG 5. So I won't probably go to the detail, but what compared to Millennium Development Goals, gender equality has become very core components of all SDG, like 17 SDGs. And then of course, with under the SDG, we have a significant number of sub-goals and also have over 200 indicators. So that's a very comprehensive kind of framework for international development work. So empowerment all women and girls has become the core inclusive and equitable societies everywhere. So that has been emphasized by both United Nations and also the its members, of course, including Canadian government. So I think in today's environment, I just want to kind of reflect what the progress report have indicated under today's COVID challenges. So I won't go through the detail, just want to highlight some gender equality challenges we are facing, and then how the gender equality integration is especially important today, and also what kind of tools and especially available for us to tackling today's challenging issues. Addressing gender equality barriers and also international development in general. So all this highlight of the progress report probably was very disappointing when we read the most recent SDG report issued by United Nations, because basically under the COVID, the poverty elevation effort progress has been really pushed back. And then come to the gender equality issue, and has become even more challenging. And then from a lot of data showing women have facing much more challenges today in both in the household and also in employment and also in society in general. So 3 in 4 women basically have been subject to physical and sexual violence at least once in the lifetime. So that was the data before COVID, that was the data. But I think with the COVID situation, more and more indicators and cases have shown women and girls have been exposed to much more challenges, including gender-based violence, early childhood, child marriage. So all this have a significant impact on our work. So I won't go to the detail for the sake of the time, but it's just like the reason I mentioned that is just how this issue under today's COVID situation relate to our work, especially integrate the gender equality into all our intervention in our collaborative initiative. So of course, there are significant increased number of child marriage, gender-based violence reported, and especially in the conflict setting. So with that in mind, also we have a lot of indicator and evidence demonstrate girls and women are being in a much more vulnerable situation. So that makes gender equality intervention and also our international development work even more challenging. How to address those challenges has become our common kind of exploration to find an innovation and solution to integrate the gender equality into our testing. So of course, there's a lot more unpaid work, and women share a lot more burdens in taking care of the family, because women, majority of them are at the front line, taking care of in the healthcare facility, and also in the household, they are also the one taking care of the sick children and also the sick adults at a household level. So how this challenging pose additional questions, and also how can we explore the solution to address all these multiple challenges. And decision-making part is also, we see a lot of challenges, women's role in decision-making political arena, and also at both household and community. So I won't go to the detail. I just want to kind of highlight how the gender inequality, it's become more severe and more challenging in today's COVID environment. So of course, we all know Canada's commitment to gender equality. We have FIAP, the Family International Assistance Policy. So we make the government make a lot of commitment over the years since the launch of the FIAP. So there's a lot of commitment there. And then I just want to refresh your memory how this Feminist International Assistance Policy, it's become a core guideline in it, at least for Canadian government's international development aid policy and also the practice. Of course, in reality, we always want to see what's the specific resources and also the support being put into place. So there are specific commitments have been made under this FIAP policy. I won't go to the detail, but definitely come back to the gender equality and also how the family's lens in this international system. There are a couple of aspect we need to pay attention to. Definitely it's a human rights base and inclusiveness. So that's relate to our intersectionality approach. All people must enjoy the same fundamental human rights. So it's really, when you look at the gender equality, it's a human rights issue that's really important. And also look at from intersectionality perspective. And it's not just a gender lens, and also had to look at the age and also physical ability, the religion, race, and other factors, because they are all kind of interrelated together. And gender equality had to be strategic and focused. So that's also under FIAP, they specifically put gender equality as its core section, and also integrate into other key area. I probably highlight that six action area they highlighted under the FIAP. So gender equality should be transformative. We all know this word, and also had to be evidence-based and accountable. So that's all kind of under the FIAP's commitment. And then this is the sixth action area, gender equality and empowerment for women and girls. It's a core action area. In addition to that, there's another 5 key action area about human dignity, growth, and that works for everyone. And environment and climate action. This is also very critical in today's environment about climate change, inclusive governance, and peace and security. So all these are the priority action area under FIAP committed by the Canadian government. But the reason I want to highlight this is really linked with the gender equality strategy. What are the priority core area we all need to look into. Gender equality strategy actually serve as a guiding document. What are the gender issue barrier identified either in your testing or project or program, and how the project intervention will address this gender issue barrier and achieve gender equality outcome. And gender equality strategy, it's an overall approach. So the approach, I think if we are familiar with mainstreaming gender equality, so that's always been the key approach has been applied. At the same time, we shouldn't undervalue the target approach or gender focused approach, because they kind of work hand in hand in gender integration to achieve both gender result and also the development result. And I probably won't go to the detail, and there are lots of instruments and tools about gender equality strategy. So my focus is going to be on the GE marker, like we use a lot for the FIT proposal and a project monitoring and evaluation. But again, I want to highlight why there will be this two target and cross-cutting approach are both important. a target approach to gender equality, definitely it's a very focused, and they specifically have intervention and specific focus on gender inequality issue and barrier. And at the same time, cross-cutting approach is more at both program and project level to really make sure the gender lens is being applied and gender equality components are also integrated into the whole process. So in both project and program perspective, in your design, planning, monitoring, evaluation, and all this process had to have this cross-cutting approach. And of course, the same understanding with the partners is very critical in terms of apply both approaches of gender intervention. So the progress toward gender equality and empowerment of women and rights in development gender requires, as I mentioned earlier, the human rights-based approach and also engagement of men and boys. And that definitely you want to empower and support women's organization. So those are the three kind of aspects when you either thinking of designing an intervention and how to integrate gender component into your testing or project intervention or even at the program level. So all these are consideration of very similar, and also they are kind of linked with one another. And engagement of men and boys has always been important aspect, but not all the gender intervention take this aspect into account. Some of them have a lot of misconception. Gender equality is about women. Of course, women is the most vulnerable group in the international development setting. But at the same time, in the power dynamic, power relationship, men plays an important role in the gender equality process. So this is also really important to pay attention to. So I will go to GEM and GEM marker and also the gender-based analysis, and also with some cases. I think that's probably the core part of my presentation, and hope we'll have the opportunity to have the Q&A to discuss. So GEMmark, there are 4 levels of scoring system. If you are familiar, I think especially Global Affairs Canada using this score system to score the gender integration level. So you have GE0, and you have GEM GE1, GE2, and GE3. So a lot of, I think right now in the guidelines, both from FIT and also from Global Affairs Canada, I don't think any 0 or 1 will get funded if you don't get to the level of a GE2 or GE3. So I probably will go to some detail how this score are being kind of what's the specific criteria they scored it. But before I go that, it's just like also remind people about equality and equity. I think we all know equity is really important. Ultimate goal is like everybody will have the same level of access to resources. And for this case, it's just everybody can see the game. But the misconception is that the equality just give everybody the same kind of resources. But look at this one, and then you are not going to get to the end goal. So I think this used a lot in when we explain about the gender equality and how the gender equality end outcome can be achieved by equity intervention. So you do need to take this into account, like what other intervention you kind of address the unique needs or specific needs or challenges of the most vulnerable group of people, because they do need more support and resources. So in the intervention here, you do need to have this unique intervention. That's why we come back to thinking about gender specific of gender focused intervention, here's the kind of the unique support and intervention to achieve the end result. So everybody will be at the same level. Actually, I think there are more kind of one more photo was showing actually just remove this barrier. So you don't even need these steps, and then everybody can watch the game. So that's another way to explain how to remove the barriers for people to achieve, to have the same level of access to the resources and benefit from the intervention. So here's the coding criteria about the 4 level of GEM marker. So of course, for the gender blind, there's no consideration of gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. There's no kind of consideration, inclusion at all. So I cannot imagine any development initiative today we have this GEM 0. But gender sensitive, it's just like they have a limit of consideration of gender equality. They do address some gender equality or inequality issue, but they are quite limited. And then they don't have, usually they don't have the gender-based analysis, which I'm going to address. And for sure, they are not going to address the systematic barrier norms, traditional norms, and also those power relationships. So that's not in GEM 1. For GEM 2, it's just one of the, they have gender equality is a significant objective. So they do address gender equality. Gender equality is probably one of the 2 or 3 of the expected interventions. So that's also important to recognize. They do have certain commitment to including gender monitoring evaluation in the process. And activities will reflect gender components, and also the framework. They do have a framework in measuring part of the gender result through the activities. But come to gender transformative marker, which is GE3, which probably people talk most today. It's really important. It's a principal objective. So all the intervention have the gender aspect, and the innovation or the testing project aim to create a lasting change in relation to gender equality. So in this GEM 3, the project or the testing does address the power dynamic, address the norms, and address the systematic or barriers and the gender, which is the fundamental causes of gender inequality in international development. So those are the coding criteria. There are lots of details I won't go to. I think you should be able to find this specific coding criteria in both FIP's website and also in Global Affairs website. I can share those resources with Abdul if people are interested in learning more. So I will probably come to the gender-based analysis and GBA Plus. So for a very, very long time, it's GBA. We always just focus on the gender lens, so identify the different roles played by women and men, girls and boys in the household, community, and workplace. So the recent years, I think GBA Plus has been introduced for the reason I think I mentioned earlier about intersectionality perspective. The analytical process used to assess a diverse group of women, men, and non-binary people, because different group of gender group, they probably experience very differently. And then they also benefit differently from the intervention. So that's why this kind of plus component is very important. And of course, the critical part is also the intersectionality component. So it's not just focused on the gender lens, like usually gender before was just thinking about binary perspective, men and women, boys and girls. Now it's more you need to really take into account the non-binary people. And at the same time, it's more kind of integration of other kind of perspective. I mentioned earlier about age, race, ethnicity, religion, and also even physical or mental disabilities. So all these are important consideration under gender-based analysis plus. Global Affairs Canada does have specific training and video for GBA Plus. You're probably aware of that. So there are lots of resources, tools out there. I can share those links through Abdul if anyone is interested in. So I talk about intersectionality, so I won't repeat it again. It's really a framework that conceptualizing person as affected by the field discrimination or disadvantages because of who he or she is. So this is really important to take into account when we are considering designing any project or program. So for the criteria for gender-based analysis, it's really look at the rights, roles, and responsibility and opportunities among and between diverse women and men and non-binary people, because different group of people, once you break it down by gender, by other factors, and you will get a clear idea. They are very different in their access to resources. Their decision-making role is very different, and the power dynamic is also very different. So it's important also to see the disparities along gender lines and also along other lines. For example, girls compared to women, they probably have very unique or different challenges come to child marriage issue and gender-based violence issue. And even look at the education part, we often see girls have a much higher dropout rate. I think there are so many data out there to demonstrate how challenging today for girls in some developing countries, particularly child marriage issue has been increased significantly. And in the criteria, come back to gender-based analysis, we also need to assess how these gender disparities are influenced and differ by other intersecting identity factors, such as age, class, sexual orientation, religion, ability, and ethnicity. And really make sure your analysis, gender-based analysis, is relevant to the focus of the initiative, either your project or your testing you plan to implement, and specific link to and shape the expected outcome, how this gender-based analysis demonstrate the logic linkage between your intervention on your expected outcome, especially the gender equality outcome. So here comes the how you conduct the gender-based analysis is what question you should ask. So of course, beneficiaries, it's really important. Who are they? What are the specific needs, and then how women being consulted on the problem or intervention is to solve, and how they are being involved in the development of this solution. So it's not kind of when you design the initiative and then whether the target beneficiary, especially women and girls, are they being part of this consultation process? Does the intervention challenge the existing gender division of labor, tasks, responsibility, and opportunities? It's more kind of what kind of change your project going to bring about regarding the existing gender division of labor responsibilities at the household and also in the community. Depends on the nature of your project or interventions. What's the best way to build on or strengthen the government's commitment to the advancement of gender equality? What's the relationship between the intervention and other actions and organizations? What do opportunity for change or entry point exist? So what's the best entry point like for your testing or for your project? Because we all have a limited time and resources. And how would you achieve that result in the most effective way, and what kind of partner you're going to engage. So what are the specific way can be proposed for encouraging and enabling women to participate? And what's the long-term impact, how this intervention or either testing or project will link to your long-term result and impact, because we are looking at the impact. So what to do under the gender-based analysis is just like you come back to analyze the roles and responsibility division of labor at a household level and also in the workplace or community. And who does what kind of work, who has the access and control over resources, the roles and ways women and men work and how they contribute to economy, family, and society. And it's very important to use participatory process and approach, engaging the beneficiary, and identify what are the barriers that women face if you want to encourage women's participation. What are the barriers if they, for now, they are not able to participate? And could be the time, could be the resources, or could be the power relationship. There's just no opportunity for women to participate. So how you open up that opportunities for women to engage in this kind of process, project design, and also project implementation. Support women's practical needs and strategic interests, and consider the different differential impact of the initiative on men and women. Those impact can be different for women and men. So how to take those factors into account, still get all the engagement and support from all stakeholders. And definitely we need to establish the data. This segregated data is really important for setting up the baseline and your indicators, and then how to make sure the target is measurable, and also identify the expected result and indicators in not just at the planning stage, and make sure all these indicators and results are being measured and monitoring during the whole process of your implementation. And definitely outline the expected risk, because it's any backlash, and what kind of strategy you are going to minimize the risk. And also the exit strategy is also very critical. What kind of sustainability can be ensured beyond this testing or intervention, local ownership, and also how and what kind of resources are still required to continue this kind of initiative. So I talk about this gender sensitive disaggregated data is important, and create an enabling environment. I mentioned about not just a lot of time the misconception is like gender equality, we only working for women. So enabling environment is definitely critical in your design and implementation. So how to really make sure the barrier can be addressed. For example, the traditional gender inequality norm, how you're going to include awareness raising on gender equality, specifically if that applicable to your testing. And also how you're educating and mobilize the community members and stakeholders. How to build the institutional capacity in terms of even just basic some kind of coordination and collaboration among organizations working in the same area or same sectors, and how to mainstreaming gender equality, and integrate the multi-sectoral engagement and responses with strategy that tailor to that identified needs and priorities. So definitely had to apply the interdisciplinary approach, and also mobilize and establish partners at all different levels. If you are working in the community, and then the local community partner will be critical for creating this enabling environment. So I will, I know Abdul is going to share like a funding opportunity. Here I'm just using the case of the call for proposal from Global Affairs Canada, how you can see the gender component are listed in the objective and also the outcome level. So in your preparation for proposal, that will hopefully the gender-based analysis can help you to apply in your proposal design. So that's just one example. I think was call for proposal I personally involved in October 2019 was probably the one of the important call for proposal in SRHR called Health and Rights for Women, Adolescent Girls and Children. So they recently, I think no, not recently, but still quite recent in November, they did announce the result of this call for proposals. I don't know any members here received that funding. If you have, congratulations. So this is $325 million to fund over 5 to 7 years for 11 projects with Canadian health partners. And the reason I want to using this because the SRHR is such a critical issue in today's environment, not just the COVID, and also I'm thinking about the climate change with all the attention kind of shifted to the climate change. We kind of see a lot of climate related challenges like displacement of people because of the disaster or conflict, because of the shortage of resources such as water. So we also see the rights component or gender intervention can be easily marginalized. It's just like there are so many challenges out there, and then especially when you are dealing with very dramatic like a more kind of disaster, like either the natural disaster or health crisis like COVID. So it's so important to understand why gender equality is still an important critical component, still need to be addressed through the intervention. So I'm reflecting back in those ultimate outcome under this call for proposal. They specifically mention about health-related human rights by the most marginalized and vulnerable rights holders, particularly women, adolescent girls, and children. So that's kind of important to keep that in mind. And at the intermediate outcome, they specific highlight you need to address 2 of the 3 intermediate outcomes. So including equitable use of health services by diverse group of women, adolescent girls, and children's rights holders. And the second intermediate outcome is improved provision of gender responsive, inclusive, and accountable health services by healthcare providers for diverse group of women, adolescent girls, and children. And third is improve effectiveness of key stakeholders, particularly women and girls' rights organizations, to advocate for evidence-based, accountable, and equitable healthcare policy, legal framework, and services. The reason I use this case is just I'm thinking a lot about today's initiative under the COVID situation. So all this hopefully can give you some kind of thinking how the gender equality can be and should be integrated in this intervention, especially want to include the equitable, inclusive healthcare services to all people, especially the marginalized and most vulnerable group of people. So I won't go to this. I talked about this. I want to go to the detail of the cases and probably leave time for questions. So I do have 2 cases I probably can share with you from the FIT, but most recently we have a gender webinar, and we invited 3 of our FIT SMOs to share the gender equality experience. One of them is World Neighbor Society Canada. They are implementing testing in Burkina Faso, specific focus on supporting women with technical animal fattening knowledge, and also access to market, how to really empower them to to have the same or equal rights compared to the male partner in the household. So they will be able to play the role not just in this their own small business, but in the whole process, how women can be empowered, played a more important role in their own livelihood and also for the family's well-being. So I think the lesson we learned from this case, they definitely spend a lot of effort working with the local gender specialists to collect very important gender sensitive data and also deliver a baseline report. So with that baseline report, I think they were able to adjust their intervention, and then how particularly one element is men's engagement, how men can play the role in this process, not just leave the woman, hey, this is intervention, it's about women, it's for the woman, but men is also played an important role in supporting women, especially not just learning the skills and knowledge, and also support women in access to the market. For example, to sell the animal in the market. Traditionally, usually it's a man taking the animal to the market for sale. Now they want to support women to play that role. So I won't go to the detail. It's just like in this whole process, we learn this is so important for our local gender specialists, local partners have the same level of understanding, and then really pay attention to gender intervention in the whole process. Another case is Empower Rural Women Through Innovation in Indonesia by FIT SMO Lestari. So they are supporting women for coffee growing. So you can see from the photo, they design and include a lot of gender awareness training, but the specific integrate into the whole process. Like you can see women are engaged in all activities, and then you also see agriculture extension workers, and usually mostly are men, but I think they specific engaging the equal number of men and women agriculture extension workers in the whole process, to how to apply the gender lens in the whole process. So I probably won't go to the detail because the result, the midterm report result are very, very positive in terms of the gender integration, and then how women are being supportive and engaged in the whole process. So I will close with some final thought about what works and what lesson learned, and you probably all learn from your own experience. I just want to highlight it. It's really important to link the immediate result with the long-term sustainable outcome and impact. And integrated approach is really critical. So gender equality components should be integrated into the whole process from both cross-cutting approach and also specific intervention. And engaging stakeholders, community members, including both men and women, of course, and mobilize support from community and government, because government does have a responsibility in the development process, and most of the government is the signing government for SDGs. So really important to ensure the government's engagement and support is in the process. And of course, empowerment of girls and women. They are not just the beneficiary, they are the agent for change. So what we have learned from the testing, FIT testing in particular, is just we find the capacity building and learning among SMOs are very, very important. They do need to have the resources. They do need to have understanding of the gender equality tools, and also have some learnings among themselves. And also the ability to adapt the specific tools to the specific local context is also critical. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution. I think we all know the same apply to gender equality intervention. So there are many, many tools out there. It's just how you will be able to adapt those tools to address the specific needs and issues in that particular context, including the country context. And strong local gender expertise and partnership is very, very critical to work effectively and collaboratively. And again, I want to highlight the gender integration in the whole process. So gender equality strategy, it's not just a document you develop and put it aside. That document should be a practical guidelines in the whole process in your design, planning, monitoring, and reporting. So I will stop here. I will hand it back to Abdul, and then for Q&A. Thank you again.
Thank you, Maggie. So now it's like this part for questions. So if you want to speak or if you want to write your question in the chat. So we'll start the question about like the what Maggie presented today, and then like question about like the application, the team fund applications, if you have any. Okay, then I will take this moment of silence as no questions. So now, any question about like team fund application, team fund process? I'm happy to answer now. So yeah, there's a question from Oti. Will the presentation be shared? Yes, it will be shared. Like in, I think Maggie, we will like to share like the content with our attendees. So,
yeah, I hope we can add some because I know some of the resources can be very helpful. I'm happy to add that to the PowerPoint so people can kind of refer to those resources.
Thank you. So there is a question, I don't like, it says like anonymous attendee. So give the image we saw about equality versus equity. Why is there such a big focus on gender equality instead of gender equity?
I think a quick answer to gender equality and equity is just like equity is more kind of the tool, the process. So if I like using that photo to show gender equality is the end outcome. We all want to achieve the gender equality outcome, but in the whole the process, equity. So that's why the human rights or rights-based approach is so important. It makes sure everyone being treated equally, have the same right, have the same access to the resource. Doesn't mean equality doesn't mean everybody get the same, because I come back to see the needs and challenges facing by different group of people are very, very different, especially thinking about the marginalized group, most vulnerable group. I can think about a lot of cases when we say engagement women, and when you often travel to the field and consulting the meetings, and often men show up, and then you don't really see women in the meeting. So you often have to ask the question, is that the meeting not scheduled at the right time? Maybe it's a time women were busy cooking for the family, or it's just like the whole practice before. It's always like, because usually in those community, men are more kind of in charge. So women are not really willing to come out to speak, especially when often I notice men were present in the meeting. So my technique is always like, in that situation, you might want to have a consultation separately with the woman group, and then hopefully I think by doing that, and then they will open up, and then you will get the right need assessment. That's why you have a really good local colleagues and gender specialists, especially, or gender focal point. They can kind of facilitate the process and then make sure all the gender needs and gender issues are being addressed and integrated in the process.
Thank you, Meg.
I see, I don't know whether you want me to jump to the question about intersectionality. I just saw
Yes.
Alice. Hi, Alice, nice to see you. Yeah, there's I think it's a good ongoing challenge and discussion about prioritize like intersectionality. There are just so many challenges saying, what about the basic needs? Like when you're thinking about those people, for example, suffering from disaster or conflict setting, regarding how gender equality should still be taken seriously. I always say you kind of had to make the noise at the same time, also make it practical, because I'm just trying to thinking about the recent stories I read. I think it's about the climate change discussion. People talk about a lot of discussion, resources going to probably put it to climate change. It's just globally we are facing this challenging. And then it's also linked to how that link to SRHR. We only have this limited of resources, but then the integration consideration is very important. I'm kind of just look at probably throw the question back to the Alice and also the people. You probably have a lot more practical experience. I can just using one example. I remember years ago when I worked for Oxfam about the agricultural extension project. So of course we want to, it's very similar to the project World Neighbor Society is implementing. So it's just support the rural women to gain the business skills and growing that specific crop so they can generate a business income. But then in your design of training, so people come out say, no way you can deliver the training because most of the women, they have a limited literacy. They cannot read. They don't have the basic understanding of this technology. So I had a really good conversation with the specialist, agricultural extension specialist, who has worked in that community many, many years. He himself also had the concerns. I say, well, if we really want to address the needs, maybe the training material and also the training method should be different. So would that be possible? You're more kind of deliver the on-site, more kind of hands-on training, and then material can be more picture and also to make it useful for the woman, because the original design was more kind of have just let the man come and then they will share what they learned with the woman. But the reality is that most of those men in that particular area, most of men are not even in the village because they are migrant to the city doing the work in the city. So it's a number of cases happen like women could not read the instruction very well, so they misuse the fertilizer. So instead of growing the crops well, they kill the crops. So we use that example and then kind of form the women together, and then how they can kind of learn effectively, form as a kind of supporting network. At the same time, I think deliver the training, I think really link with what's workable is also very important. And then one rewarding probably learning I feel is like during that process is the people involved in this project, they recognize how useful it is to integrate the gender lens in the whole process. So I think that's kind of to change the norm, and after that they kind of I won't say automatically, they probably share that cases with other project initiative and design. I thought that's a really good learning for myself, really kind of make sure it's relevant, it's related to the testing.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie. Question from Christine. My organization is new to gender equality work. Where would you suggest we get started from practical perspective?
Well, I would say all the organizations don't underestimate your understanding of gender equality work. I think you probably, a lot of time when I work with this community, especially the community-based organization, they may not use the same term or words about gender equality. Actually, they are already doing the work. So to get it started, it's just like how to really make sure intentionally they will kind of include that gender lens, for example, in the project design and implementation. So some kind of technical support can be useful, but then also help them to start thinking about what can they do, because they probably already doing that. I'm using the same example about that women's group. And actually, when I went to the field, you already can see how women automatically will come together, support each other. It's kind of laid out a good foundation for if you're thinking about empowerment of girls and women. It's not really just giving them something. Actually, it's more kind of motivate them to think from their own perspective. How can they play the role to address the gender inequality issue and challenges? Another example I can share is like really listening to the beneficiaries and also the women themselves. For example, I'm come back to that Women's Economic Empowerment Initiative. When we really support them, for example, they are going to run their own business. They are going to learn. At the same time, they are still share the responsibility of taking care of the household. So how you really address that double burden, because it's a good way saying, hey, we are helping the women so they can generate the income. A lot of time it's you don't address the gender inequality issue, and women end up doing more work, and then the income they generate from their own business, and a lot of studies showing it's not spending on women themselves. So who is making the decision of spending the money, and they probably still the money being spent by husband or put for the boys instead of sending girls to school. So here is again, it's how the integration of the gender lens. So ultimately, you want them to benefit from this intervention without adding extra burden on them. But that's how this gender norm intervention, how you make sure the male, the husband or partner in the household, they can play the supportive role, for example, running the business, and then will be the equal share of the business, equal share of the responsibility, and then come up to the income generation. Women will have the equal saying about how that money can be spent. So I think it's just giving you kind of one specific example why and how the gender equality lens can be integrated into your design and implementation. And also do consider sometimes address one aspect may not necessarily really benefit to women's well-being, because you might in the process adding additional burden to women. So that's why this kind of comprehensive approach is very important.
Thank you. Yes, so I can say like we answer all the questions. There is like just this is the last part of the webinar, just making sure that everyone like aware about the theme fund. And the theme fund is a portion of the Manitoba Government Matching Grant Program, or the MGMGP, which is the government of Manitoba has generously supported international development through MGMGP since 1975. So the goal of this theme fund is bring a thematic approach to the MGMGP, as well as to increase the accessibility of funding to all MCIC members. So the amount for this fund is like combine a base amount of 50,000 with funds unexpended in other or in our other categories like development, relief and rehabilitation, and community solidarity fund. So like the current theme will be like the same as last year. Every 2 years we change like the theme based on, I mean, like the issue, like the current issue the word like, the current issue of international concern reflected in the theme. So the current theme is gender equality and empowerment of women, girls, and gender non-conforming people. The deadline for the application this year is January 31st, 2022. So I'm looking forward to receive all of your applications. If you have any question when you are completing the application form or about the theme, any part of the application, just reach out to me. And if you have any question about what Maggie presented about gender equality today, please send me an email as well, and I will pass it to her. So yeah, is there any other questions so we can answer it now? Okay, then take this silence as no questions. There will be a post-webinar survey. So it will just take 1 to 2 minutes to complete. That would be great if you can complete after after we finish this webinar. You will receive the link once you close or leave the webinar. So please take the opportunity and fill out the survey. And yeah, thank you so much, Maggie, for your great informative presentation today. And thank you for all of our attendees today, and looking forward to receive your theme fund application for this year. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.